Hi everybody, it's Miss Kathryn here, and we are doing a salt crystal snowflake experiment. Hopefully you have picked up your packet at the library. If you haven't, you're welcome to come in and get them while supplies last. In the packet you'll find the instructions on how to do this experiment. The only thing you'll need to have is table salt and a nice quantity of it, because we're going to use quite a bit of it. In the packet at the library that you can pick up are a couple pieces of blue paper and some pipe cleaners and the instructions on how to do this. If you want to do that, that's great. The pipe cleaners are an extra little experiment that you could do. I will confess to you, and I'm going to show you in just a minute, this has not worked for me at all. So let me show you what I did. Last night was my third attempt, and this is what I have right here in this dish. You can see the water's moving a little bit. I don't know, I'm gonna hold this up a little closer. I don't think with the light you'll be able to see, but there is, salt crystals are forming. There is a lot of water in this dish though, a lot of salt water in this dish. I'm going to set this aside. What I'm gonna do is we're gonna use, I'll tell you a little bit about, my experience with this experiment. I'm going to set this aside really quick, just so that we can create another one. So I've been having trouble. I started thinking about this last night. In every experiment that you do, you have a hypothesis. Our hypothesis is, for this experiment, if we add these ingredients together, the hot water and the salt, and a paper cut snowflake, that a chemical reaction will happen between the hot water and the salt. It's going to melt the table salt, that hot water. You're going to pour it in here, the salt water. We're going to leave it sit, and it may take a while. So, some of the people that I watched do this, it's taken 4 hours, some people overnight. There are other variables involved. So variables are the things that you use, the water and the salt and the paper, and the heat. Those are all the variables of this experiment right here. But as I have been thinking about overnight, I do not have soft water in my house. I don't have a water softener. I have this crazy 126-year-old home. So, the water that I'm drinking is not bad for me, but a lot of the minerals that are filtered out with a water softener are still in my water. And so I boiled some water to use with this experiment today. You can use boiled water, you can use tap water, as the instructions say. However, be careful. Hot water is hot water. It burns and it hurts. So please be careful. First things first, we do have salt. We have our measuring cups and our measuring spoons. We have hot water that I'm going to pour here in a minute. You need a snowflake. However you want to cut a snowflake, cut a snowflake. The instructions say to create a circle. I folded this paper in half. To get this snowflake, I cut from one corner on the fold all around. So I did this. Okay, that makes a circle, and then I folded it. After I cut it out, I folded it this way and there's a little edge here, as you can see. Folded it this way and cut that off and made it round. Opened it up, and then I folded the paper. I folded it in half as a circle. I folded that in half as a circle, and then I folded it like this and made a little cone shape. Now, because I made a circle, it's a rounded cone shape here. You can fold it just like this and then cut. Okay, if you fold it just like this, all you need is a cone shape to make your, right? And you've probably done this before, but you can cut this just like this. and that will make your cone shape. And then you can cut. I would not advise you to fold it again unless you have really sharp scissors and you're really good at this. I'm not that good, so I folded it just 3 times, and then I cut out my shapes. And this is what my snowflake looks like. Okay, so I've got my snowflake in my shallow dish, my paper snowflake in my shallow dish. I'm going to step over to the stove that's right here. I'm going to pour a 1/2 cup of boiling water into my cup, and then I am going to start adding the salt 1 teaspoon at a time. What we want to do is add salt to your water and watch that water level rise up to 1 cup. I lost count. I think I added 8 or 9 tablespoons of salt to get this up to 8 ounces or 1 cup. So we're right there. So I'm going to put the salt and the spoon aside. We aren't going to stir this, but you do need to let it sit for a few minutes. You want enough salt water in here to pour here. You will be throwing out the leftover salt. There will be quite a bit of salt in the bottom of this cup. So I can see, and I don't know if you can see, can you see that liquid on top? It's full of salt that is dissolving, which is really cool. We're just going to give it another few minutes. Now, I was talking to you about my mistakes, and making mistakes is great because we learn from our mistakes. And when you're doing an experiment, we have our variables. We have our salt. We have our hot water. And that is, there's a little chemical reaction going on there. I'm going to hold this up again. You may not be able to see it, but the salt is moving in the water. It's pretty cool. I hope yours is doing the same thing. But these are our known variables, right? We have paper, we have salt, we have hot water. We put these together. They're making a chemical reaction, which means it is changing the salt and the water. So 2 elements come together and they are creating a reaction. And that is really cool. What we want to do, we're going to do this now, and then I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about what's happening here in my home with my experiments and how I've failed at them. So I'm going to pour this liquid onto my snowflake, and I'm going to, see, my table is slanted a little. It's not level. I want to cover the snowflake with this salt water, and then I want to stop and look how much I have left over of salt. I have a little bit of salt water left, and I'm just going to dribble it on there. Now it would be really cool if the reaction for this happened like that, but it doesn't. So we have to set this aside. You want to set it on a level table. My little island in my kitchen is not level. It is not 126 years old, but it's still not level. So we're going to set this aside and we're going to let the magic happen. I do not want to put my finger in there, but I do want to get, I see a little piece of paper that doesn't have any liquid on it. Okay, that's all the liquid I got out of there. Shallow pan, hot or boiling water, and salt. Those are our 3, and the paper. Those are like our variables here. A variable is something that you introduce in your experiment or is unknowingly introduced in your experience. So there's known variables which you say, hey, I'm going to use this, and this. Salt, hot water, piece of paper, and I'm going to create crystals, salt crystals, on my snowflake by using those 3-4 elements, right? But sometimes things happen that you don't really think about prior to your experiment. They become known variables after you figure out why this is not working. So this snowflake that I did last night, it's interesting because I use tap water with my salt. Now, this one admittedly has way too much water. It's too much liquid in there. But right now, with this shallow, newly created with boiling water snowflake, I see crystals forming in here. This took overnight for me to get. So one of the problems that I'm finding, this variable that is not making this experiment, this snowflake work really well, is I use too much water. The other thing about my house, as I believe I said, is I don't have a water softener. So there are other elements in my water that may not be as prevalent in your water if you have a water softener. The water softener just filters a lot of the minerals out. Minerals aren't bad for you, but you know, when there's a lot of them, causes some issues in your home, and it may change the result of these experiments, this experiment we're doing. Boiling the water helps. Boiling the water on the stove, bringing it to a very hot temperature helps. So I think this one is going to work better. The other thing about my kitchen is that it's a little colder than any other room in my house. There is no heat source in my kitchen except for a little heater that is under the kitchen sink that blows warm air onto your feet while you're doing the dishes. And what it really does is it keeps the pipes from freezing in this room. That is really what it does. So I'm going to move these two, when we're done, into my dining room. And that has a radiator in it, and they're going to sit on the table near the radiator. And I think that that's going to help the evaporation process for both of these. It's not going to happen now while we're talking or we're on camera here during the tutorial. It's going to take a while, and you're going to have to keep looking at this to figure out how long exactly it took you. I will post pictures with the tutorial so you can see how this ended up for me at my house. And I would love it if you do this, if you'll post some pictures of how your experiment went as well. You don't need to film it, but if you want to just show me pictures of your salt crystal snowflakes, I would love that. In your packet, there is a little extra bonus experiment that you can do with pipe cleaners if you put them together in the shape of a star, or not a star. Well, it looks like an asterisk. I'll show you mine. I put mine together so that it looked like this. And then when I did the experiment last night with this snowflake, paper snowflake, I also put this one in a shallow dish with salt water on it. Much too much water. This is soaking wet. You can see on the plate right there, there are snow crystals forming. I'm going to let this dry in the dining room with these two, and we'll see what it looks like when it's dry. Again, I would caution you not to put too much salt water on your pipe cleaner snowflake, just to cover it, just a little covering of it. And then, you know, my suggestion is if you have a room that's a little cooler than another room, put these in a little bit warmer of a room. I think that will help with the evaporation. I'm not sure, but we're going to try it and we'll see. Experiments are like that. Sometimes they work beautifully and sometimes you fail. So we'll see how these turn out, and I will let you know. All right. In a little secondary post, I'll post some pictures and tell you how long it took for these to make their salt crystals and which one worked better. This is the one that's been soaking overnight. And this is the one we just did. And we'll take a look at them again. All right. I'll post some pictures and let you know what happened. I hope this works out for you. You know, it's really interesting how the salt is going to change shape. I want to pour a little salt on my hand. And you can do this too if you want. But when you look at these crystals, these little pieces of salt, they're very tiny, right? Our crystals are going to look bigger than this, right? So I'm hoping to see some bigger crystals than this. And, you know, in that we have changed the shape of the salt, which is really cool. Okay, guys, I think you can probably hear my dog barking. It's time for me to go. If you do this, please post a picture of your salt crystals on our Facebook page. We'd love to see them. And I will see you next time with another activity. Have a great day.